all now left for you to make your own conclusions after listening to those men and women speak their minds really on how far they think decentralization could go in helping reduce the number of poor people in Cameroon and of course help fast track this nation's development. If you stay on with us on this other edition of Inside, you're going to see Kejan Henry, who comes up with what the papers say. There is Meme Dominique, who's going to probably throw more light on the upcoming meeting, conclave, if you don't mind, at the United Nations Security Council. They say it's happening on May the 13th. It's still sketchy news though, but Dominique has all the details you need to know. There's someone from CAMASECH-D, that's the Cameroon Association of English-Speaking Journalists, who will help us go back to the activities the association organized before and on May the 3rd, which was World Press Freedom Day. That's not all. There's an IT engineer in the building who will tell us why digital economy is probably the next frontier for entrepreneurs in Cameroon. But right now, let's turn our focus to marriage. And what do you say, or what do you do? What don't you need to do before you say, I do, to someone? He's right here with us. He's called Tatoh Kenneth. He's an author. He's a man of God because he actually runs a ministry. It is called Reconciliation Ministry Worldwide, Remy, and he works at the Bamenda Police Cooperative Credit Union. These are too many caps for your small head, sir. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so very much. I'm happy to be here again. Thank you. I want to greet you and greet the televiewers of Canal2 English. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Sincerely, we appreciate the fact that you could come. And, you know, we decided the last time you came here that marriage is such an important thing in this place that people just need to be aware of everything before they get involved.
Actually, it is very important to really have proper orientation, because when you look at the number of marriages that are hitting the rock today, it's important to have the proper orientation so that people really settle well and honorably in marriage. It's very, very important.
Now, you know, I'm just going to say this casually without putting my fingers on any details. Marriages are tough things in Cameroon these days. You know, with as we grow older, as we move into the future, marriages are just cracking up. People hardly succeed in staying together for 25, 50 and more years like our parents used to. There's a problem here.
I think your observation is quite on spot, because as I said, marriages are actually hitting the rock. I've asked a number of questions to myself, like, could it be this wake of modernization? Are we losing some values that kept our parents in the days of old to keep their marriages in place? Are we? And more importantly, I think the fear of God and doing things God's way is a major problem that is contributing to the breakdown of marriages in society today. You know, God is the author of marriage, right. And to get it, to hold it all together, we need to really do things God's way. Okay. We are looking at our society today with a lot of people wanting to do things, you know, just to do it the easier way, because the easier way is not necessarily the best way.
You see a couple of people spending millions, really, organizing big parties for their weddings, but then 2 months after,
everything is over. It is. I've seen marriages that got over after 1 month.
Okay.
Yes, and after a lot of fanfare, and so the difference between the wedding ceremony and the marriage is always there, which we need to draw the lines clearly. The dichotomy between marriage life, to say, and the wedding ceremony. The difference is just clear, and there is always need to give each of them its place.
Okay.
The wedding ceremony can be as big or whatever you can think of, but the marriage life is another phase of the story.
You see, now that we're all in agreement that this is a big problem for this current generation of Cameroonians, and probably even out of Cameroon. That's why we decided, and this is an announcement for you all, this is going to be a regular feature on the show every Monday. Do we agree on that too?
I think it will be a pleasure to contribute to at least get the necessary information to our fellow brothers and sisters out there so that we can have at least healthier marriages, because I think information is a very powerful tool in working towards building healthier marriages.
Right. So now you know, around this time every Monday, you watch Inside. If you have problems with your marriage, the counselor is here to help you come through them. And what we're focusing on today is something that's additionally delicate, right? Do you do the traditional wedding and say, yes, that's okay, I'm not going to church, I'm not going to the mayor's place to have this thing put on my finger? Is it sufficient to do the traditional part of the wedding and close the books?
I think there is need to give everything its place without discounting the place of traditional marriage. I want to think anybody who ends at that level has just gone, if we were to put it without necessarily attaching weights to it, just about 1/3 of the journey. Okay. 1/3. It begins from there. After everything is settled and the two people have agreed that they should get married, the families are supposed to go into an agreement too, because within our African setting, especially for the woman, they believe they give their daughter not just to a gentleman who came towards them, they give it to a family.
But that's the problem, because I get married to a lady, not to a family, right?
Well, the idea is that they think maybe a gentleman, the man is not as responsible as to hold their daughter well, because she came from a family, she didn't come from an individual.
They're not
so
going
they
to
think
live in
family
families.
should embrace.
Are they going to live in families?
No,
you just live with who you get married to.
Not living together. You know, it has to do with with welcoming her, getting her feel at home. You know, so that she knows she didn't just get married to a man. She got married to also become a daughter into the family by virtue of marriage. You know, relationships have to do with what you call affinity, consanguinity. You know, she comes from a family where she is related by blood, but now she is being adopted to another family by virtue of marriage. So she must be embraced into it, because the two of them will not operate as an island. Yeah. Both of them have to embrace their respective families.
So you get involved with in-laws, and some of those in-laws could be, you know, there's a new talk now, the same monster-in-law, you know, mother-in-law, you know, so you get involved with people like that. It's easy for your marriage to collapse within a month.
It is very true. The idea is usually that when they say a lady or the two parties get into, you know, should embrace their families, it's not a leeway for the two families to get so involved into their marriage.
All right.
They should come from an advisory position. They should not come to impose things on them, to tell them how to run their home. No.
Okay.
Yeah, if they do that, they get to frustrate them from settling and building their own family. They should just come to show them that affection, to know that, to let them know they are by them,
and the support from the families.
Yes, the support from the families, and to maybe give them a word of advice, not imposing anything on them.
Now, you said the traditional wedding is only 2/3 of the journey.
1/3.
1/3, right? So what's in 2/3?
When the parties, you know, the two families agree to join the man and the woman in marriage, I used to say jokingly that it's like they have witnessed their relationship before the ancestors, because within our African setting, there are usually these rites that are performed, and you know, their own kind of solemnization. So after this, there is need for a civil marriage, because we operate within a context which is a country, and there are laws. I think as of now, I'm not a legal expert, I think the 1981 marriage ordinance sets some basis on which the two parties are supposed to function in order to formalize their marriage. You know, they register it at the Civil Status Registration Center, and the bands are published for 1 month. After 1 month, they now come for the signing proper, and then the marriage is joined, such that there is a legal backing to that marriage. And the advice to women is usually, you don't just take your life into a gentleman's own life, and you people start investing together, you're doing things together, and tomorrow may be, which we're not praying for, there is a separation, you have nothing to say, you have nothing to do, because, you know, at that level it will be that it was just maybe a marriage by maybe by the conduct for which maybe they lived for a long time, maybe this is 5 years or so, the law says 5 years after that is a marriage by implication from conduct, which is not supposed to be so. There are supposed to be terms clearly spelled out.
Read the
joint
law.
Property, sorry.
You read the law.
You know, for the sake of marriage counseling, I try to have a few pieces of information here and there in order to orientate.
No, you know, in other words, I'm saying that to go into a serious relationship, marriage in this case, you need to know the law.
Well,
because if you don't,
when you go to the
get ensnared.
When you go to the civil status registration center, I think they call it a mayor. They give the basic orientation, and I observed some things in some of these centers, which is interesting. They do a small booklet and give to people who come to sign marriages.
All right.
Yes. Okay. So at that level now, the state knows that you are married, even for professional purposes. If you don't, there are people who are married, but they can't benefit certain things at the level of their job site because they never signed. There is no marriage certificate to show for. So it's important. Then after this is done, the final state now comes in, which is the church blessing. I call it church blessing because the most important part of this white wedding we call is the blessing proper, when the two parties are exchanging their vows and when they are doing that's the blessing, when the man of God blesses the union. This is very important because
God comes into play now.
God comes into play as the final authority. The children coming from both parties, the families are just custodians. They have just a stewardship role on the boy and the girl. Yeah. So God, who is the final authority now, the relationship is witnessed before him and the church. And following the law in Cameroon, any man of God who blesses a marriage without a marriage certificate is subject to penal sanctions.
Good.
Yeah.
That's a scoop, right? I didn't know that.
Yes, yes. You bless a marriage without a marriage certificate, you are subject
for trouble.
Yes. So it is important. So at the level of the church, what we do often is we ascertain that both families, there was, and we often, especially we often want to accompany them step by step. Yeah. As I said, that it's true that there are certain practices which are not healthy. They are not healthy at the level of the family. So we accompany them, advise them that please negotiate with your families that you won't want to be involved in this, and in that. Because there are some effects. So after that, the families now accompany them for the signing at the civil status center, and then accompany them to church where the marriage blessing is sealed. At that level, the prayers is what keeps them. Yeah, not only hard work or caution, diligence will keep the marriage. The grace of God also is necessary.
I know you're going to say that. After all, you're a man of God, right? Can I see your finger, please? All right. How long you been wearing that? 11
years now.
Perfect. That's why you're premarital counselor for Insight. Thanks sincerely for coming. I think next week we should just tell our viewers a couple of topics we probably may want to handle. And I was looking at, because you ended in church, I was just saying, is it complicated getting married when I'm Baptist and my spouse is Catholic or Muslim?
That is usually handled.
Should those things be agreed, approved?
Yes, I stand for the fact that that particular aspect must be handled during the premarital counseling. There must be an agreement.
Let's talk about this on Monday.
All right.
Don't say everything today. They'll probably not have nothing for next week. Tatoh Kenneth, thanks sincerely. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
The pleasure is mine, rather, to be here.
Let's do this. We're going to take a break now, and we're going to go into the world of digital technologies and its straight evolution across Cameroon. Increasingly, a couple of young people and women and men, right, are getting involved in startups all hinged on information technology. Now, Rebecca Enonchong is the CEO and founder of a business